Tonight, breach of trust. The RCMP charged one of their own with helping a foreign nation. A Mountie in Alberta accused.
They wouldn't go this far if they didn't have very solid evidence.
What police are saying about who he shared records with.
This is kind of unexpected.
A winter storm blasting through the U.S. hits Atlantic Canada. Plus, the chaos after a car crashes into a hospital ER in Texas. Also, renting a home to robbers, an Airbnb disaster.
What I didn't know was that people were coming and going with truckloads of my stuff.
And a lost ship found decades later.
It looks like you can see some cracks in the hull where probably when it hit bottom.
A mystery solved at the bottom of Lake Superior.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. A frontline RCMP constable whose job it is to enforce the law is tonight accused of breaking it. The Mountie accused of using his position to help a foreign actor. And while police say the information accessed was not top secret, it is serious. The breach is one of several high-profile cases recently. William Miker, a former Mountie and resident of Hong Kong, is accused of using his Canadian network to help China. Last week, Cameron Ortis, a former RCMP intelligence official, was sentenced to 14 years for leaking information. And last month, a 911 operator in Calgary was accused of pulling data to help individuals connected to organized crime. And for more, let's go to CTV's Michael Couture, who has been tracking this story out of our Ottawa bureau. And Mike, what do we know about which country this Mountie was allegedly trying to help and what he was trying to access?
Yeah, Omar, we don't know what information was passed on, but we do know that it went to the Republic of Rwanda. Now, security experts point out foreign governments of all stripes are targeting Canada for a variety of reasons, and this is a reminder of that reality. The RCMP says one of their frontline officers accessed non-top secret record systems. Now, the Mounties didn't disclose what type of information he would have had access to on a daily basis. However, security experts do tell us that a police officer at his level would have had access to the Canadian Police Information Centre, which is a central police database. It stores information about crimes and criminals right across this country. So Constable Eli Indatuya is facing 3 charges: breach of trust, unauthorized use of a computer, and breach of trust in respect to the safeguarded information. That is part of the Security Information Act. That act was brought in after 9/11, and it's designed to prevent espionage and information from going to foreign states. Omar?
And the Mountie's first court appearance on March 11th in Calgary. Mike, thank you for this tonight. A storm system that already swiped across the U.S. Northeast is now slamming into Atlantic Canada, bringing even more snow after last week's historic fall. Parts of Nova Scotia are bracing for up to 25 centimeters, and in Newfoundland, double that. Here's CTV's Sarah Plowman.
The snow fell fast and furious, coating roads and canceling flights.
So I have to wait here maybe for 2 days or 3 till the storm gonna pass.
The nor'easter pounding parts of Nova Scotia dumped more than 30 centimeters on some parts of the U.S. Northeast, causing travel chaos.
On my way to work, but I got stuck in the snow twice. They just had a guy had to pull me to the gas station.
And bringing out plows in New York City for the first time in 2 years.
We want to thank New Yorkers for taking it seriously. We want to urge New Yorkers to continue to do so.
A snowmobiler was killed when he hit a downed power line. North of Boston, icy roads sent this car rolling over the median, nearly hitting an ambulance. The storm knocked out power for tens of thousands and grounded flights.
And now it is moving to the south and the east of us here in the Maritime region. We are getting clipped by some of that heavier snow here in Nova Scotia. And then after that, it's going to hit more directly into eastern parts of Newfoundland.
The blizzard arrives just over a week after 150 centimeters fell in parts of Cape Breton. Some students only returned to school yesterday.
That it just popped the drywall because of...
Others, like this restaurant, are still closed. The ceiling was damaged from significant snow on the roof. They were fully booked for Valentine's Day.
We are a small business. Every day, lost revenue is lost revenue.
Sydney is dumping some snow in its harbor as it prepares for more. Here in Nova Scotia, it's expected we'll get between 15 and 25 centimeters. A lot of it already falling in just a few hours, but eastern and northern Newfoundland, Omar, could see even more, between 30 and 50 centimeters. Omar.
All right, Sarah, try to stay warm and stay safe. Thank you for this tonight. For those experiencing homelessness, life on the streets can be especially dangerous in these frigid conditions. But cold weather isn't the only threat. So are evictions from so-called tent cities. And as CTV's Judy Trin reports, housing advocates are urging immediate action for an issue they insist is life or death.
Again, it's like portable. It's all portable. So it's sitting on wheels.
Ken Lee has called a wooden crate home for more than a decade. Over the years, he's been evicted several times.
You know, they run you around relentlessly, and even because of their chasing me down with the police and stuff.
I know! It hurts though!
The federal housing advocate says evictions have to stop. The growing number of encampments is a crisis that can't be dismantled. It's estimated that at least 300,000 people are homeless in Canada. As many as 25% of them live in these makeshift shelters.
Every day is a matter of life and death for people living in encampments. This national crisis calls for a national response.
At the Ottawa Mission Shelter, 10% of the people who use its services don't earn enough to pay rent. The shelter doesn't have enough space to meet demand.
We have to find them housing. We have to find them safer, better, affordable alternatives than staying in encampments.
The federal government is providing financial incentives to build more apartments to drive down rent.
You can't solve the issue around homelessness and encampments without having an ecosystem that has sufficient affordable housing stock for low-income families.
But the new apartments won't be completed for years. In Gatineau, an example of what can be done now. People move to heated tents with access to electricity and help from social workers to find permanent homes. The federal housing advocate says all people living in an encampment should have access to basic needs like clean water and food. Mary-Josée Houle has demanded that a national response plan be drafted by August 31st. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. More than 6 million Canadians say they don't have regular access to a doctor, and the crisis is most acute in remote communities. Now, in an effort to boost access, some health professionals, including physicians and nurses, are getting an incentive. But as CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports, that alone will not solve the problem.
Okay. More than 1 in 5 Canadians don't have access to a family doctor or nurse practitioner. And in rural areas, the problem is particularly pronounced.
In a rural area, you might only have, 2 or 3 providers, depending on the size. And so when one person leaves, that has a huge impact.
To encourage more medical professionals to enter rural medicine, Ottawa today announced it's spending $26.2 million to forgive up to $60,000 in student loans for a family physician or family medicine resident, and up to $30,000 for a nurse or nurse practitioner. The government expects about 3,000 medical professionals will benefit this year alone.
Providing more student loan debt relief will encourage more young people to become doctors and nurses to practice in underserved areas.
One of those young people who will benefit from the loan forgiveness is first-year medical student Nicholas Lambert. As soon as he's done school in Sudbury, he intends to move home to Elliott Lake.
If I'm able to go back there and help some of the people that I know kind of are in need of a family physician and have told me that they'd like to have a family doctor, I think that would be very meaningful, and I'd be actively contributing to the well-being of my community, which I think is a pretty gratifying feeling.
A feeling that even after 40 years, Perth's Alan Drummond still has.
I love being part of the community. It may not be for everybody, but I kind of like going to the grocery store and encountering my patients and chatting about the Ottawa Senators and the cost of groceries and their hemorrhoids.
But the new policy alone won't fix Canada's doctor shortage. By 2031, federal data suggests the country will need as many as 49,000 more family physicians.
There's no question our workforce and our capacity is not keeping up with the booming population.
To be eligible, you must have started practicing on or after July 1st, 2011, and still be repaying your Canada student loans. The current funding, Omar, is being delivered over 5 years to help with retention.
All right, Annie, thanks. New details about the alleged shooter who opened fire over the weekend at a Texas megachurch. Today, Genesee Moreno's former mother-in-law spoke out about the warning signs.
She threatened her husband's life. She threatened mine. She threatened to kill her own son.
Divorce documents show Moreno had a history of mental illness. Officials say she bought the assault-style rifle back in December and used multiple aliases, including male and female names. And just a few hours from the scene of that shooting, terrifying moments unfolded at a Texas hospital this evening. A car crashed into an emergency room in Austin, the tires screeching and spinning out of control as smoke filled the lobby. 2 children are among nearly a dozen injured, some seriously. Police say it did not appear to be an intentional act. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister met with her U.S. counterpart in Washington today. The crisis in the Middle East was a key theme. Talks are underway in Cairo for a temporary truce to free hostages as calls grow for Israel to hold back its planned assault in Rafah. Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malvin.
In Rafah, there's no place else to go. More than 1 million displaced Palestinians now packed into the southern city of Gaza. As Israeli airstrikes hit houses and mosques, panic has set in. They kept saying, "Go to Rafah," this man says. Then you target them. This man has already lost his entire family, and Israel's planned ground invasion hasn't even begun.
The Middle East.
In Washington, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister meeting with Antony Blinken as international pressure grows to end this war.
I would like to thank all the work that you've been doing along with Qatar and Egypt on getting to a hostage deal.
CIA Director William Burns in Cairo, along with Israeli and Qatari mediators pushing for a temporary truce, releasing Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners.
Kids in Gaza are now dying from the deliberate withholding of food. It is a textbook war crime.
From the White House, President Joe Biden urged Republicans to pass a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine and Israel that would include humanitarian help for Gaza. But House Republicans refused to vote on it because Donald Trump told them not to.
National security begins with border security. We have said that all along.
Except Republicans had a bipartisan border bill and rejected it, so Trump can use immigration as a campaign issue. Biden blasting Trump over his latest comments about not defending NATO allies from Russia.
No other president in our history has ever bowed down to a Russian dictator. For God's sake, it's dumb, it's shameful, it's dangerous, it's un-American.
As for those ceasefire talks, they've been described as serious, productive, but no breakthrough yet. As the UN Secretary General warns if Israel invades Rafah, it could lead to a bloodbath. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. A Canadian mining company has suspended operations at a gold mine in eastern Turkey today after a massive landslide. A giant mound of soil processed for gold collapsed and crumbled, rapidly flowing through the valley. 400 rescue workers are desperately searching for 9 missing miners. There are fears cyanide, which is used in the extraction process, is contaminating the area. Major grocers in this country have been appearing before a House of Commons committee to defend their pricing practices as pressure builds on companies to stabilize soaring food prices. Today, it was Costco Canada's turn, and CTV's Colton Prail was tracking that appearance. Colton, what did we learn?
Omar, Costco says they're focused on keeping prices low for customers. But today we learned after meeting with the federal government, Costco did not freeze prices during the holiday period as asked, saying instead their membership model forces them to keep costs as low as possible for their members. Much of today's committee meeting focused on a grocer's code of conduct. Pierre Riel says Costco generally supports the idea if it includes participation from everybody in the industry, vendors, grocers, and multinational corporations, even saying legislating that cross-industry involvement could be a good move.
It's very tough, sitting in my seat and say, I'm for it, and I don't know all the disputes going to be fixed. You don't know who's going to participate. You don't know if multinational is going to be in. There's things that need to be done prior for a decision to be made.
The grocery giant is governed by a code of conduct in some jurisdictions, like the UK, but hasn't signed on in Australia, where the code of conduct is voluntary. On top of a code of conduct, Riel added that there are other areas where Canada could improve to help lower food costs. Part of that is related to production across the country, what food can be grown rather than imported, but another aspect is the supply chain.
I think we have some work to do. I think the rail is something can be improved, port can be improved. I think if we all sit together and work on it, I think the consumer is going to benefit from it.
Riel did say he expects prices will continue to increase, particularly as costs for suppliers increase, something that will eventually be passed on to consumers. Omar.
All right, Colton Prail in Ottawa, where the NDP leader put the federal government on notice again.
If they break the agreement, they walk away from the agreement, there is nothing that they can expect from us then. We will negotiate. We'll negotiate every vote at a time.
Jagmeet Singh wants a commitment on universal pharmacare by the end of the month. And if it doesn't happen, he is vowing to pull out of a pact that's keeping the Liberals in power. The health minister says he's confident the government can deliver pharmacare legislation by March 1st. Coming up, a house that no longer feels like a home.
I have to sell it. I can't be here. I can't let other people come here anymore.
Adding up the damage and the losses after an Airbnb robbery, plus the modern technology that helped find an old shipwreck in Lake Superior. A woman who rented out her dream home in Alberta through Airbnb is sharing her nightmare experience. The sentimental family home built by her late husband was ransacked by robbers. Birth certificates were snatched and precious valuables vanished. Here's CTV's Evan Kenny.
Jocelyn St. Ange has been living in her dream home near Wabamun, west of Edmonton, for 22 years.
And my husband had built this for us, and then he passed away.
After her husband died 2 years ago, she decided to rent the house out on Airbnb.
It was so beautiful, I wanted to share it.
In the middle of January, a woman rented the house for 1 week. St. Ange was staying with family and says the cold was affecting access to her security cameras. Jocelyn says the house sleeps 14 and she expected people would be coming and going.
What I didn't know was that people were coming and going with truckloads of my stuff.
The thieves took everything, including TVs and pictures off the walls, bed frames, and birth certificates. They emptied out the cupboards. In return, they left used needles behind and a shotgun blast in a wall and ceiling. They even stole her truck.
That was full.
The RCMP says properties that are rented out like this typically have the same risk for a robbery as a regular home. But
this sort of larger scale theft where the house is pretty much ransacked is pretty rare.
St. Ange estimates more than $170,000 in property was stolen and has been quoted $70,000 for cleaning and repairs. What was once a welcoming home built by her husband is now a shell she's no longer emotionally attached to.
And I just looked at it and I thought, I have to sell it. I can't be here. I can't let other people come here anymore. It's just too violating.
Evan Kenny, CTV News, Edmonton.
Well, if you drive in Ontario, one annual task may soon be off your plate.
We did the first step, getting rid of the sticker. Now we're getting rid of the re-registration.
The province is shifting gears on license plate re-registration, swapping out the manual process for automatic renewals. But this will apply only to those with no outstanding fines for traffic violations. The changes are part of a larger omnibus bill to be introduced next week. Still ahead, a not-so-smooth criminal. A Beverly Hills burglar lands in hot water. Dramatic new video has emerged from a private plane crash on a busy Florida highway. This is the moment of impact after both engines failed, smoke billowing on the road. The crash involving Canadian-manufactured Bombardier killed 2 of the 5 people on board. A rocking career in competitive curling for one of Canada's most decorated athletes is coming to a close.
Jennifer Jones will go for gold again.
Olympic gold medalist and curling champion Jennifer Jones announced she is retiring from women's curling at the end of the season. The 49-year-old from Winnipeg said in a statement the sport challenged and changed her. Jones will continue to play mixed doubles with her husband. And a clumsy criminal has made a splash during his getaway from a Beverly Hills mansion. Watch as the suspect stumbles through a window before attempting to climb a precariously placed ladder. The burglar's best laid plans and the ladder came crashing down into the backyard pool. The thief now in police custody. After the break, a mysterious discovery from the depths of Lake Superior.
They could hear all these cracking noises. They could hear rivets popping when these ships would twist.
The wreckage of a merchant ship found more than 80 years after it disappeared. A missing Second World War era ship that sank in stormy weather more than 8 decades ago was finally found in Lake Superior. But the circumstances surrounding its demise and why the captain went down with the ship remain a mystery. Here's CTV's Heather Wright.
At the bottom of Lake Superior, more than 180 meters below the surface, lies the wreck of the SS Arlington. Once loaded with wheat, the Arlington sank nearly 84 years ago, discovered last year off the coast of Michigan.
It looks like you can see some cracks in the hull where probably when it hit bottom.
In April 1940, the Arlington left Thunder Bay, Ontario, en route to Owen Sound. It hit bad weather with waves more than 10 feet high.
They could hear all these cracking noises. They could hear rivets popping when these ships would twist. Rivets would go flying out of them. And they just heard a lot of noise that was not good.
Bad weather on Lake Superior is certainly not unusual. What was strange, according to the crew, was the behavior of the captain, Frederick Burke. The Historical Society says the crew worried about decisions he made once the storm hit and says he spent most of the voyage in his cabin. When they decided to abandon ship, he refused to leave.
The wheelsman was the last to leave the pilot house, but the captain told him basically just, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying on board. Within less than 15 minutes, the ship rolled over, in their words, and just disappeared.
Every crew member got off the ship except the captain. A young sailor told the Free Press Herald, "It was my first trip and my last," calling the voyage hectic. There is a plan to return to the Arlington this spring with a remote-operated vehicle to take more pictures of the ship.
It's got high-definition cameras, it's got high-intensity lighting, and you can really see a lot.
Those pictures may share some secrets about Arlington's last moments, but why Captain Burke went down with the ship will likely remain a mystery. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
And that's a snapshot of this Tuesday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.